जी सैंडमैन तो नहीं पढ़ा था मतलब बहुत सालों पहले पढ़ा था, पर नील गेमन जो इस किताब के ऑथर हैं, उनकी जो पहली किताब थी कॉरलाइन, उसकी मैं बहुत बड़ी फैन हूँ. बट नील गेमन्स वर्क इज सच दैट it's very hard to define the genre, you know. So yeah, I was a huge fan of Coraline, and then I had 9 months of Punjabi classes.
Okay.
So, matlab, we started with just learning folk songs, hearing folk songs.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that. I'm not good at it, but I also grew up in an Air Force family where we moved places every 4 years. So then you just learn a new language and you forget the older one and you try to fit in. I have to say, I really believe in desire, in being. I've seen that whenever in my life I've really wanted something, it's manifested itself. If you can hit a note that is in that moment feels authentic and unfamiliar and exciting, then you can carry it through. I don't think the voice exists without the body.
Absolutely.
The body doesn't exist without the voice. I'm also from the school of thought that I genuinely believe that you can't improve performance in a dub. So there is a whole school of actors who feel कि ठीक है, acting कर लो set पे, and if you didn't get them right, the lines, you can fix it in the dub. You can fix it, but I don't think you can improve it. I don't think it's just because you're doing some audio work doesn't mean you leave your body at home. When you read something in the original language, your mind takes time to shift gears. Calliope, the muse of poetry, for inspiration. And she goes through a really, like, the chapters where Calliope comes into Sandman are quite dark, because it tells a story of men who need a woman as a muse, but they don't give her any freedom or agency. एक इतनी घटिया सी परंपरा है जो कि we need to make a woman on a pedestal, like either a goddess or a muse, and stay there, you know, while the men do all the writing and telling the great stories, and the women are not given any agency or freedom. And this whole relationship and this concept of the muse and the artist are not giving the woman any agency. I think Neil Gaiman just strips the band-aid out of that.
Hi, hello, namaskar. You all are watching Punjab Kesari Navade Times, and I have with me right now very gorgeous, talented, versatile actress Tillotama Shome, जिन्हें हम देखने वाले हैं बहुत जल्द एक बहुत ही बढ़िया कमाल की सीरीज में, लेकिन ये वीडियो फॉर्मेट में नहीं, ऑडियो फॉर्मेट में आ रही है, जिसके लिए मैं बहुत ज्यादा एक्साइटेड हूँ. सो वेल, लेट्स वेलकम तिलोत्तमा ऑन द शो. तिलोत्तमा, बहुत बहुत स्वागत आपका पंजाब केसरी नवोदय टाइम्स पे. कैसी हैं आप?
जी मैं बहुत बढ़िया हूँ, आप कैसी हैं?
एकदम बढ़िया, एकदम मस्त, एकदम चकाचक. आपको देख के और मस्त हो गई हूँ मैं. तो आप बताएं कितना एक्साइटमेंट है अभी, मतलब लाइक ऑडियो एंटरटेनमेंट के तौर पर ये सीरीज आ रही है और ये बेस्ट सेलिंग सीरीज रही है. अगर मैं बात करती हूँ अभी इस सीरीज की, सैंडमैन की, तो जब आपको ऑफर हुआ ये किरदार, तो आपने सैंडमैन पढ़ा था नॉवेल?
जी सैंडमैन तो नहीं पढ़ा था मतलब बहुत सालों पहले पढ़ा था, पर नील गेमन जो इस किताब के ऑथर हैं, उनकी जो पहली किताब थी कॉरलाइन, उसकी मैं बहुत बड़ी फैन हूँ. और नील गेमन जी ने एक ऐसी किताब लिखी है, मतलब जिसको, मतलब हम सोसाइटी में हमारी टेंडेंसी है कि ये जॉनर क्या है, वी वांट टू पेग समथिंग डाउन कि ये जॉनर है, ये जॉनर है. But Neil Gaiman's work is such that it's very hard to define the genre, you know. So yeah, I was a huge fan of Coraline, and then Sandman. I have read. I mean, it's massive, right? It's an epic, and to be very honest, I haven't finished the entire thing, but I've read, and this is years ago, and yeah, true to his signature style. I mean, it's a world unto its own. It has characters that you will meet that you would have never met.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he has this beautiful ability to make that something which is very familiar unfamiliar, and something very unfamiliar familiar. And I think that happens, in a lot of his work, and I think Sandman is no
I
exception.
believe Neil can bring life to any of his scripts, I believe, है ना?
Especially to the dead. He's really
Yes,
good
absolutely.
at bringing life to the dead.
So how Tillotama was approached for the series?
Just a phone call, like it
अच्छा,
happens, nothing dramatic.
हाँ,
But I have to say, I really believe in desire, in being. I've seen that whenever in my life I've really wanted something, it's manifested itself. And
oh wow,
there's a film I had seen called The Guilty. It's
हाँ,
a Danish film. गुस्ताव मोलर करके हैं उनके डायरेक्टर. और फिल्म में एक ही किरदार है, एक आदमी, and the other character in the film is a woman who we never see. Okay? It's a phone call between this man who we see and this woman who we never see. It's a thriller. You are at the edge of your seat, and you start to think that you can see this woman, but you never see her. And by the end of the film, you're like hoping that you can see what she looks like, because by now, you know, she's entered your brain, she's entered your bloodstream, but you don't get the satisfaction of ever seeing her face. And the film ends, and I was haunted by who that woman is. I went back to my hotel room and I searched for her online. And she actually went on to win the Best Supporting Actress. And because it was really an extraordinary performance. And for me, there were moments when, and the male actor was extraordinary, and he's won many awards as well. But I think her performance reminded me of the power of audio without video, a performance, an audio performance without video, because there was something interesting that happened. A bunch of us who watched the film together, we asked each other a question. If we could all describe what that woman we think looks like. And everyone came up. Someone thought she was very tall. Someone thought she was very tiny, very petite.
oh wow,
Someone thought she was very dominating. Someone thought she was very meek. And they described her. None of our descriptions matched. And that's what, really made me stop and think that the power of this medium is that it invites you into a world, but it allows your own imagination to color it,
absolutely,
Whereas
it
in
is.
video, you see what you see. With audio, it's like it enters your brain, and then there's some kind of synapse, like, a kind of chemical reaction that happens, and then you perceive it in a certain way and put your own images to it. You're not
I
fed
do
by it.
agree.
It's the closest, I think, experience to reading a book.
कि
जब आप किताब पढ़ते हैं तो आप इमेजिन करने लगते हैं ना कि आपके कैरेक्टर्स कैसे दिखते हैं. And whereas in film or in video, we are spoon fed a lot. So, I mean, that's when I decided, okay, I want to do audio work. I actually started calling up some of the agencies that do audio work, and this happened just like a few months after I made a decision to really explore this as an actor, where you don't have your face, your body to carry you through.
So we were like discussing about the story, video format and audio format. It actually makes me feel like a TV presenter or an anchor turned into a radio jockey.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good parallel, right? But often it's looked as a reductive thing, but I think each has its own strength. And I think what I'm really interested in is what are the performance milestones in audio work? Because I think, like any medium, it can be constantly improved and bettered, and the stakes can be higher and higher. Imagine, I mean, there was the restrictions of COVID when we recorded this, but imagine if we were actually because I know of audio performances where actors are actually in a physical space. They're actually climbing real stairs. So the sound design, the performance, the inner space. So I think the sky is the limit with the kind of, I'm really glad that Audible has, started this journey of in Hindi, in languages that are in vernacular languages, because I think the power of this medium is something that we have to yet experience in our country. I think this is a very, very, very positive and exciting start.
Absolutely, this is coming up these days. Storytelling सबके सामने आ रहा है अलग अलग फॉर्मेट्स में, पॉडकास्ट में और अभी ऑडिबल के थ्रू भी. इनफैक्ट मैं जानना चाहूंगी, लाइक जब आप कैमरा पे होते हो एज एन एक्टर, यू हैव डन क्वाइट अ लाइक लॉट ऑफ वर्क ऑन कैमरा, तो एक अलग चीज होती है कि आप परफॉर्मेंस दे रहे हो एंड ऑल, आपका वो इमोशन नजर आ रहा है. बट व्हेन यू आर नॉट इन फ्रंट ऑफ कैमरा, with your voice, with your modulations, with your like tonality, everything, you just have to emote things and express your emotions. So was that tricky for you anyhow to do it in a storytelling format?
I find any format tricky. I think unless you hit on some sort of vein of authenticity, it feels tricky and it feels unwieldy. I think if you if you can hit a note that is in that moment feels authentic and unfamiliar and exciting, then you can carry it through. I think it's the same for me in any format. And I don't think the voice exists without the body.
Absolutely.
The body doesn't exist without the voice. I'm one of those actors who, did my first film, was shot on 35 mm and then moved into the digital world. So I'm also from the school of thought that I genuinely believe that you can't improve performance in a dub. So there is a whole school of actors who feel ki ठीक है, acting कर लो set पे, and if you didn't get them right, the lines, you can fix it in the dub. You can fix it, but I don't think you can improve it. Because I don't think you can separate the body and the voice, and they're part of an organism, which is, one. And so I feel whether you're doing voice work or you are just doing, video or it's audio, I think the body and the mind are at play. It's just that one is seen and one is unseen, but it's like faith or love, desire, guilt. These are all emotions that you don't see, but you feel them. It's like that, but they exist. So I mean, when I was voicing for Calliope, my entire body was involved, not just my voice. And I feel like that when I'm dubbing. I feel utterly helpless because I'm not in that situation and I have to recreate that situation. So I don't think it's just because you're doing some audio work doesn't mean you leave your body at home.
Absolutely.
It's a whole thing, right? It's one thing. If your body is tired, your voice has an exhaustion to it.
Everything is correlated,
Yeah,
na?
the texture
Even I
changes.
would love to ask you, like, कलायब का किरदार play करने के लिए कितना वक्त लगा आपको? How much time did you take to prepare for it?
Actually, there's not too much time. The people were wonderful at the studio. Script way in advance. The Hindi, the Hindi dialogues. I think the initial trouble was when you read something in the original language, your mind takes time to shift gears. But that was the initial, like, when you read them in the original, then, yeah, I mean, it wasn't, I was given enough time with the text in advance, and then at the studio, it didn't take that long.
अच्छा, वैसे if I talk about Tillotama, तो आपके लिए तो कुछ भी मुश्किल नहीं है. I think you have worked in so many languages: English,
Right.
Hindi, Bengali, Nepali, Punjabi. So how do you have this great command over all the languages?
I don't have command over any language. That's how it's possible. I don't know anything very well, but I'm willing to learn. And if I'm given time, I don't do very well with not being given time. So all the directors I've worked with, if there's a need for a new language for me to learn, like for Kissa, I had 9 months of Punjabi classes.
Okay.
So matlab we started with just learning folk songs, hearing folk songs.
Yeah. Nice, yeah.
So I say, it's like that. I'm not good at it, but I also grew up in an Air Force family where we moved places every 4 years. So then you just learn a new language and you forget the older one and you try to fit in. So yeah, I think
So that's
bachpan
how
se
you
ye
do
chal
it.
raha hai. Preparation for this life, I guess.
Very nice. In fact, मैं ये भी जानना चाहूंगी, like this series has got like ensemble cast of seasoned actors.
My
Neeraj
God, yeah.
Kapoor, Manoj Bajpayee, Tabu is the narrator. In fact,
Totally.
Adarsh Gaurav is there. You are there. So how was the experience working with the ensemble cast?
The thing is, we
Seasoned actors.
worked during COVID, so we never got to meet each other. And it was, I was so surprised at who the cast was. I didn't even know that these are the names attached to the project. So it's very exciting to know that such wonderful actors who have had such wonderful unique journeys actually have come to this industry through such unique stories. Each of these people that you mentioned, not just the veterans like Tabu and Manoj, but all the new voices that are there. They've had such unique journeys that have got them here. So it's really wonderful to be part of an ensemble like this.
Any advices that is like given to you by the director of the series to take care or to keep in mind while performing or preparing for your character? Talaya.
Not really. Like I think what was really kept in check was that I think that was really the challenge was with the translators, like how you can translate in a way that reads organically. And if any part felt that it wasn't reading, they helped me figure a meter or a rhythm that worked. But no, the thing is that about Calliope is, do you know about her character?
Yes, थोड़ा बहुत.
थोड़ा बहुत. तो क्या लगा आपको सुन के थोड़ा बहुत?
मुझे ये लगा कि लाइक दिस इज वन कैरेक्टर जो हर किसी के बस का तो नहीं है करना, बट यू वर चोजन फॉर इट बिकॉज आपने काफी सारा काम ऑलरेडी किया है एंड टू ट्रस्ट ऑन यू फॉर नील वाज लाइक वो आप पे ट्रस्ट कर सकते थे इस किरदार के लिए. और तो कुछ खास मुझे लाइक पता ही नहीं है इस कैरेक्टर के बारे में. आई वुड लव टू नो फ्रॉम यू.
So, I mean, you asked why would I not say yes to doing something like this? Because, as you know, Sandman, it was a massive, massive hit on Audible internationally. And so that's the commercial aspect of a well-positioned, work of, work that already has a massive pre-existing cult following. But that's really the mechanics of that was not for me as exciting as the character of Calliope. If you look at her, like, okay, what is our species, Namita? We are human, right? Calliope is a goddess. Okay. What's her occupation? I'm an actor, you're a journalist. Her occupation is she's the muse of epic poetry.
Okay.
उनके रिश्तेदार कौन है? Her son is Orpheus and her lover is Dream.
Oh wow, that's nice.
What are her affiliations? Her affiliations are the Greek pantheon. She's the youngest.
ninth muse, na? I think.
Yes, of the 9 muses, she's the youngest. So she's pretty cool, right? If you hear like wow, kya baat hai, you know, like what an amazing woman. But now in Neil Gaiman's Sandman, I think there's a very, very interesting thing that happens with Calliope, because Neil Gaiman Sandman is about it's a story about art made by these really awful men called Madoc and Erasmus. It's a story about art made by these two not so nice men. And these two not so nice men have imprisoned Calliope, the muse of poetry, for inspiration. And she goes through a really, like, the chapters where Calliope comes into Sandman are quite dark, because it tells a story of men who need a woman as a muse, but they don't give her any freedom or agency and are abusive, you know? So what I found, when you find Calliope in the show, she's a prisoner and her rage has turned into despair already, you know? But she tells him that, you know, I'm more than just here for your inspiration, you know. And I love the character. I loved how Neil Gaiman has actually created this character that completely smashes this age-old archetype of the man and his muse, you know. हमारे मतलब ये एक इतनी घटिया सी परंपरा है जो कि we need to make a woman on a pedestal, like either a goddess or a muse, and stay there, you know, while the men do all the writing and telling the great stories, and the women are not given any agency or freedom. And this whole relationship and this concept of the muse and the artist and not giving the woman any agency, I think Neil Gaiman just strips the band-aid out of that and says that this fantasy that we have needs to be destroyed. It's not a fantasy. It's abuse. And he does that, you know, he does that through the character of Calliope. And I think it's really progressive. It's a tale that needs to be told. And I think it's a really powerful character for this reason for me, and was perhaps the reason, you know, I said yes, because I think it's a good metaphor for the times in which we are living, where we need to look at women. We need to stop pedestalizing women as goddesses or muses, and they're human beings and they have needs and desires that need to be respected. And you know, if we are going to imprison poetry, what kind of civilization are we going to have? And I think Sandman really, like, in creating Calliope, I think it's one of the most you know, interesting characters and powerful characters, female characters for me, for that reason, in a world of men. Yeah.
Absolutely. You have described it so beautifully. I'm so looking forward to watch the series now. In fact, not watching the series, but to listen to the series on Audibles.
You will watch it. People, I think, often think that when they're hearing something, they're not watching it, but you'll watch it. Your mind is going to have its own visuals.
I'm going to imagine that.
Yes, I hope you enjoy it.
I'm not a book lover. I don't read books, but मुझे लगता है कि ये मुझे बहुत पसंद आने वाला है. Thank you so much, Tillotama, for talking to us on Punjab Kesari Navade Times, and all the very, very best to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.